Hey guys, and welcome back to my channel. My name is Lauren, and I am the author of the story you're about to listen to. This week's story is In Love with a Single Father. It has the tropes single father, baby, opposite ends of the track, and I think that's it. There's some emotional wounds, there's some fun stuff. It's a pretty good story, and I hope you guys will enjoy it.
In Love with a Single Father. In Love with Series. Written by L. Lauren. Chapter 1. Silas. With 2 heavy takeaway containers in one hand and a drink holder with 3 drinks in it in the other hand, Silas jogged from the local Chinese One Walk back to the jet black sedan parked right out front. The shrieks of an unhappy baby greeted him as soon as he opened the passenger door. "It's okay, it's okay. Daddy's back," he cooed as he collapsed back in the vehicle, placing the takeaway containers between his legs and resting the drinks in his lap. "Took you long enough." "Good gravy, she's been crying the whole time," the driver and Silas's best friend Marigold said, tapping on her cell phone screen with manicured nails. "Do babies always cry so much?" "I don't know. It's probably getting close to feeding time." He twisted an arm behind him, soothing her by combing his fingers through her coily hair. "Do you want to take a break after this delivery and feed her? We could go to a park or something." Marigold rolled away from the restaurant. "We'll be at the place in about 10 minutes. We're making great time too." "Good," Silas sighed. Once the baby was quieted, he relaxed into his seat, buckling his seatbelt across his body and settling in for the short drive. 6 months ago, his life was completely different. 6 months ago, he was living it up with all the other mid-20-somethings, hopping from bar to bar on the weekends and droning through work on the weekdays. He had been a server at one of the most popular weekend bars. He had made at least $200 every night and counted the money on the floor of his apartment as Marigold counted hers. 6 months ago, his life had been almost perfect. That was until his sister woke him in the middle of the night, begged him to watch her 10-day-old baby, and promised she'd be back in the morning. Baby Autumn had cost him his good job, his decent relationship, and all of his free time. He tried not to think of the time before too much, but it was hard to forget that had he not opened the door for his sister, he'd still be pulling in over $1,000 a week. Now, he was lucky if he got half of that in a week. He hadn't had a full, steady job in half a year, and his savings were quickly dwindling. He tried to reach his sister, of course, but the only number he had for her had been disconnected. Calling his parents wasn't an option, because he only had a mother, and she had died 5 years ago in a car accident. Marigold pulled into the parking lot of the biggest skyscraper in town, Freeman Inc., and stopped at the front entrance, turning blaring hip-hop music down to a whisper and craning her neck to look out the window. "You know, I'm pretty sure we come here once a day. How rich do you have to be to order takeaway for lunch 5 times a week?" "Yeah," Silas chuckled. "At least the receptionist is nice." "Who?" "His name's Theo." "Is he cute?" Silas groaned. "He's not bad, but I'm off dating, and so are you. We've talked about this. We're focusing on our work. I have to deal with this," he waved a hand around, "and you're supposed to be returning to university." "I am returning to university. I have my classes all ready to go, and the semester starts in a few weeks. I'll still be able to work nights at the bar too." "Good," Silas said as he grabbed the food. "Oh, hang on now. Take this thing with you." Marigold hiked a thumb behind her, towards the baby. With another groan, Silas walked around the car, slipped Autumn in her carrier, and strapped it to his front. Then he grabbed the food and drinks and walked inside. His sneakers squeaked against the floor as he walked across the lobby to the receptionist's desk and put the food down. "Hey Theo," Silas said. Theo looked up from behind a computer screen and grinned. "Silas," he greeted him in response. "Are you always working the lunch shift?" Silas shrugged. "Not always, but you know how people sleep on the lunch shifts. They think the only good shifts are in the evenings and at night." Why's that? Oh, because it's definitely far busier in the evenings and at night. You get more orders during peak hours, but on average, people tend to tip less. When you work during the day, even at a restaurant, you make a good amount during the day because it's all the regulars, and they tip really well. Really? Silas nodded. Yep. Anyway, I should get back to it. He hiked his thumb towards the door. I'll see you tomorrow, probably. Probably, Theo laughed and waved as Silas jogged out of the building. He wasted no time getting back to the vehicle, unstrapping Autumn as he walked. How'd it go? Marigold asked as Silas slipped Autumn back into her car seat. Just fine really, Silas said, snapping the baby in. Theo was there, and we had a little chat. Oh right, Theo, Marigold teased, singing his name. Yeah, Theo, and we talked a few minutes about, food delivery shifts. I don't know, just basic small talk. He kissed Autumn's chubby little cheeks, and that's when he saw it. Oh fuck me, he groaned. Chapter 2. A.J. Arthur Freeman, Jr., named after his father who was Arthur Freeman I, dropped his head back against his chair and looked at the ceiling. It was barely noon, and he'd already attended 3 very, very boring business meetings. He loved his job, sure, but meetings never became less boring. First, there had been a financial trajectory meeting, and that bled into a meeting with his advertisers. Hours later, he had the most interesting of the 3 meetings, which had been a meeting with product designers. A.J. had taken over his father's local formal clothing shop and turned it into a real company. When old Arthur Freeman I had purchased the building several years ago, he had done so based on a vision. He wanted to provide high-quality suits and professional tailoring to his people. A half a century later, that vision had expanded into a lot more. They had renovated the building several times in the last 50 years, taking a little walk-in showroom and splitting it into sections. On one side, they had all their tailoring, alterations, and wedding clients, and on the other side, with a different entrance, they had the retail floor. The retail side ran itself really, and A.J. never had much of an interest in retail goings-on. His interest stayed with the creation of products, which led his father to make a third branch of the business and turn the whole thing into its own franchise. Freeman Suits had become more than a shop. It had become one of the leading local designers for casual business suits, mid-priced loafers, and cologne. And the mastermind behind all that had become quite hungry. He usually tried to wait around until noon, but his growling stomach got the better of him, and he ordered the office's usual order from their usual place. From the incoming messages on his cell phone, he knew when his order had been passed to the delivery driver, tracked the driver all the way here, and knew, at this very moment, his hot lunch was being dropped off at the receptionist's desk in the front lobby on the alterations side, as he had requested. His mouth watered as he set his work aside and strolled downstairs, checking his email on the way. He started towards the receptionist's desk, but paused at the sound of an unfamiliar voice. The voice itself sounded like it belonged in a studio, whether that was voice acting for the latest cartoon star or for adult entertainment. It was smooth and raspy at the same time, pure but a little rough at the edges. And deep. A.J. liked that, and he liked the owner of the voice even more. The stranger had a dazzling smile and laugh like wind chimes, and A.J. couldn't help but smirk as he watched his receptionist make small talk with the food-delivering stranger with a baby strapped to his chest. The baby sobered things up for A.J. He wasn't against babies, but babies made things complicated. Either the man, the gorgeous, slender-built man with a head of loose curls, was married to some lucky woman or man, and had created the cutest little pale-skinned, coily-haired baby, or he was a single father. A.J. couldn't decide which was worse. He hung back as the stranger and his receptionist spoke, approaching his employee as the man strolled to the exit. "Hey boss." "Hey Theo," A.J. said. "How's it going?" "It's good. A quiet day so far. Anyway, you came down just in time. The delivery guy just dropped off your lunch." Theo motioned to the plastic bag and drink combo beside him. "Yeah, I saw. AJ held up his cell phone. Theo chuckled. If you've got enough time to track your delivery, then you can come down here and help me with all the upcoming summer bookings. Nah. I believe we should stick to what we're good at, unless you'd like to be stuck convincing a bunch of cheap investors that coral suits aren't the wave of the future. Theo gagged. I'll pass, thanks. So, AJ slid the food closer. That was the delivery guy. Yeah. His name's Cyrus, I think, and he works the days. He used to work at some restaurant downtown. Oh. AJ cleared his throat, trying to mask his interest as best he could. He's delivering with a baby? Oh yeah. Baby Autumn. She's a cute little thing. Is it? The wall-mounted phone behind Theo cut his words off. Hold on a sec, boss, Theo said as he spun on his heels and plucked the phone off the receiver. AJ lingered, loosening the knot on the plastic bag and checking the contents. He had his salad, his side soup, and his condiments, but his main dish wasn't in the bag. Frowning, he slid the bag aside and peeked behind the counter as Theo paced back and forth on the phone. The missing food wasn't behind the counter, and AJ's frown deepened. Everything good, boss? No, actually. Sorry. The stranger raced inside the building, holding a white plastic bag above his head. I'm sorry, he repeated as he raced up to the counter. I left this in the... Thanks, AJ blurted out, taking the bag from the stranger directly. Car, the man's voice wilted. I'm really sorry. It's okay, AJ mumbled, opening and closing his mouth as he tried to work out something else to say. You should probably eat that while it's still warm, the stranger offered. I have a microwave in my office. Oh, he nodded. Well, that's good for you. I'm Arthur, a Freeman. AJ extended a hand. Silas. Silas gave his hand a firm shake. Most people call me AJ. Most people call me Silas, but you really should get that upstairs and in your belly while it's still warm. It can wait. So, you deliver food? Silas smiled. Yes, it's the dream job, and it makes the big bucks, as they say, but no. Well, yes, I deliver food, but it's a temporary situation as I work on finding new employment. Oh, I see. Well, what are your skills? Silas lifted both of his eyebrows towards his hairline. What are my skills? I didn't realize I was walking into a job interview. You've got me on the spot. Apologies. How about what are you passionate about? His eyebrows went higher and he laughed. You know what? I'm passionate about photography, actually. Especially street photography. I like capturing people exactly as they are. I used to get out a lot before, he paused. I used to get out a lot, but I don't have the time as much lately. Talking about photography had shaved years off his face and made him look young and youthful and happy, but just as soon as the lightness had come, it faded away again. That's too bad, AJ said. I'd love to see some of your work. You could drop off a portfolio next time you're around this way. Silas's smile returned. Oh, I'll think about it. Anyway, I should go. I have more deliveries. He motioned to the exit. Yeah, AJ held up his 2 bags of food, and I should get to eating this before it gets cold. You should. Silas agreed before he left. Chapter 3. Silas. The goal had been $100. $100, not in orders but in earned money, before Marigold had to go to work, and they barely made it. As soon as they crossed the goal, they ended the shift and drove back to his apartment, where she dumped them off and dashed off to the restaurant. Silas would have enjoyed the company of his best friend, but he was also grateful to have a little time to himself. He laid Autumn down for a nap, and while she was sleeping in a makeshift bassinet in the living room, he hand-washed her clothes and hung them around his apartment to dry. He washed a few of his necessities as well, spent some time looking for odd jobs online, and eventually fell asleep right alongside her. They both woke when Marigold returned several hours later with a takeaway box full of leftovers and a cheery smile on her face. "I'm back," she announced, dropping her keys on the side table by the door and kicking her shoes off underneath it. "Don't tell me you slept this whole time." Silas groaned as he sat up, knuckling sleep from his eyes and scooping Autumn into his arms before she could get herself worked up. "I think we did. I guess that shift wore us both out." "I guess so," she teased, following him into the kitchen. "I brought you something from the restaurant." "Thanks," he said, shifting Autumn in his arms as he rinsed a bottle and slid her container of formula closer. "I can hold her while you do that, you know," Marigold suggested, opening her arms towards Silas and the baby. "I know, but," he sighed, "you didn't ask for any of this. It's not your responsibility, and you're already helping me out so much." "You didn't ask for any of this either, so give her here." She opened and closed her fists until Silas conceded and gave her Autumn. "Anyway, how was work?" "Work was work. It's not really the same without you there, honestly." "What about you? You spent an awful long time inside at that one stop, the one where you forgot half the food." "Yeah, that was mortifying." "Don't remind me," Silas groaned. "I ran into the guy who ordered it." "Oh shit. Was he pissed?" "No, actually." Silas shrugged. "We talked for a bit, and I don't know, somehow it got around to me doing photography and sending over my portfolio." "What?" Marigold squealed. "That's amazing. Have you sent it yet?" Silas popped open the formula container and tipped it on its side, tapping it against the counter to get all the contents to one side. He scraped the bottom as he gathered as much formula as he could with each scoop and dumped it in the bottle. No. When I got home I did chores, and then I fell asleep. Besides, there's a big glaring problem with his hiring me for photography anyway." "What problem?" "I sold my camera and equipment for Autumn's food and clothes, remember?" He filled the bottle with warm water, shook it, and then opened his arms for the baby again. "Oh right. You did, didn't you?" "Yeah." He took Autumn into his arms, cradling her against his shoulder as he offered her the bottle. She was just getting to the point where she could hold it on her own, and her tiny pudgy little fingers scraped at the plastic as she drank. Silas tugged his lips into a smile as he peered down at her blissful expression and drooping eyelids. Looking at her, he couldn't imagine anyone wanting to get rid of her, and even though it was hard taking care of a baby he never planned for, he cherished these moments. "Okay, maybe you don't have a camera anymore, but hear me out. If you go ahead and send your portfolio, and you get hired for a job, build in the price of the equipment to your fee. I mean, yeah, you're going to take a big loss on that first job, but you'll have your equipment back." She snapped her fingers. "Or you could say that you need a contract, guarantee yourself a couple rounds of work, and then—" "I don't know, Mari," Silas sighed. "If I have a photography job, who's going to watch Autumn?" Marigold looked around. "Me? Obviously. Dear Lord. And if you're not available?" "I'll be available, don't you worry." Silas chewed his bottom lip as he wrestled the bottle away from Autumn and propped her up differently, patting and rubbing her back. "Okay, fine. I'll send the portfolio over shortly." Marigold shook her head. "Let me finish with Autumn so you can do it now." He watched his best friend for a long moment, still rhythmically patting Autumn's back. When Autumn let out a wet burp, he relented and passed her back to Marigold. "Okay. I'll be right back." With a quick look over his shoulder, he retreated to his bedroom, opening his old laptop computer and digging through his folders. He didn't have a prepared portfolio, but he cherry-picked 10 of his latest and best photos before searching AJ's information. He found it, typed a quick email, including all of the attachments, took a deep breath and hit the send button. Before he could overthink it any more than he already had, he shut his laptop and went back to the living room, where Marigold had camped out on the couch with the baby. "You sent it?" she asked sleepily. Yeah, he said, curling up on the couch next to her and resting his head on her shoulder. He was asleep again in an instant, and he didn't wake up again until the next morning when Autumn's shrill cries stirred him awake. She was in her bassinet, a fresh, unopened container of formula was beside it, and Marigold was nowhere to be found. Silas pressed his lips together as tears brimmed his eyes. He picked up Autumn and the formula and went into the kitchen, starting his routine while checking his socials and his email. Socials were boring, and most new emails were junk. Except one. It had been marked urgent, and it was at the top of the list. From AJ. Chapter 4. AJ. He couldn't stop reviewing the photos Silas had sent over. He wasn't an artist by any means, but anyone with working eyeballs could see just how talented Silas was with a camera in his hands. "Jay, you know how we feel about cell phones at the table," his mother said in a calm and matter-of-fact tone. She didn't even look up as she spoke. AJ had spent the evening with his parents and fallen asleep in his childhood room after a long night of work. He had his own place, a luxury apartment downtown close to the office, but sometimes he appreciated the quietness of his parents' suburban neighborhood. Plus, his parents were getting on in age, and he liked to spend time with them. They liked it too, though they were quick to forget he was a grown man in his 30s and not a 13-year-old boy. "Sorry, Mom," AJ said, tucking his cell phone into his pocket. "I met this photographer yesterday, and I asked him to send over his portfolio." "I understand that, but you have all day to do business. It can wait 30 minutes while we have breakfast." AJ chuckled. "Sure it can. What's on the menu this morning?" "Your favorite. Eggs, grits, bacon, and toast." "Thanks, Mom," he said as she set the plate down in front of him. "What's your plan for the day?" "Oh, I have a hair appointment scheduled, so I'll be ready for church on Sunday." "Are you going to be able to come with us? You know it's homecoming weekend, and everyone would love to see you." AJ forced a smile. "I'll see, but it's supposed to be cloudy, which is the best day for a photo shoot." "You can have your photo shoot another time. Family is more important than some business photo shoot." She waved a dismissive hand. "Now, if you're going to come, you ought to get a retwist too. Your roots are looking real nappy." "I kind of like them grown out a little bit," AJ said as he mixed his grits, eggs, and bacon together. "Is that what the young people are doing these days?" "I suppose we are," AJ laughed. He kept his cell phone tucked away as he finished his breakfast, but he fled the kitchen right after, pulling his cell phone out of his pocket as fast as he could. He wanted to take another look at Silas's portfolio pictures, but when he opened his email again, he saw a response. His heart jumped into his throat, tampering with his expectations before he opened it and scanned over the brief response. He read it again and smiled. "What are you smiling about?" his father asked as he strolled into the living room on his way to the kitchen. "Nothing, Pops. A photographer I met confirmed a meeting for this afternoon. I've never seen you smiling like that about work. Is this photographer cute?" "It's not." "Is who cute?" His mom popped into the living room, drying her hands on her apron. "Junior's got a date with a photographer this afternoon." "It's not a date. It's business," AJ corrected, even though his heart drummed in his chest. It would have been nice if it were a date. He hadn't been on a date in almost a decade, and he had his reasons for it. One major reason was work. The other reason was right in front of him. "Is she cute?" His mother lifted both of her eyebrows. "Of course she's cute. If my son picked her, then she's a good-looking woman. Smart too, I bet. I hope she wants children, because I've been waiting too long for grandkids. Plus, you need a son to take over the business." AJ sighed. "It's not a date, and I'll find someone when I'm ready." Soured by his parents' undue excitement, he escaped to his childhood bedroom and finished getting dressed for the day. He avoided them on his way out too, but that wasn't difficult, as his father had already left for the golf club, and his mother was preparing for a Quilters Guild event she was hosting at the library. He loved his parents, but they scared him too. They'd always put pressure on him. As a child, they had pushed him to get perfect grades, and pushed him to be a star player on the basketball court and football field. They'd pushed him into college for a degree in business economics, and they'd pushed him to take over his father's company. Now they were pushing him into marriage, but not just marriage. They were pushing him into the idea of marriage with a woman, and he wasn't sure he could be pushed into something he didn't want for the rest of his life. He worked in his office for the morning, but come lunchtime, his whole body was buzzing with anticipation, like an electrical wire with too much charge. He had invited Silas to Cups, which was only a few blocks from the office, and as he walked down the street, he tried his best to shake off his nerves. This was a photographer with a baby no less, and AJ was more nervous than he had been for last year's $10 million merger. But this was different, too. Standing in front of Silas, he had felt something. He'd felt his heart wake up, and long-neglected nerve endings rewire themselves. He'd felt exposed but thrilled at the same time, and as much as this was about business, it was also a little personal. He wanted Silas to work with him, yes, but he also wanted Silas to like him, to be interested in him too. AJ sucked in a deep breath and entered the coffee shop. He glanced around, but Silas hadn't arrived yet, so instead he approached the counter. "Hey there," the barista greeted him, brushing curly bangs from in front of her face. "What can I get you?" Can I get a large black coffee?" He squinted at the menu. "Sure. Do you want room for cream or any added sweetener?" "No, thank you. And also, I'm waiting on someone, so when he gets here, could you put his order on my card too?" She scribbled his order on a cup and set it aside, bobbing her head as he spoke. I think so. You have a card on file, don't you?" "I should." "Okay, then yeah, I can do that. What's his name?" "It should be Silas," a voice behind him said. "The order'll be for Silas." Chapter 5. Silas. His heart had fluttered when he saw AJ at the counter ordering his drink, and it surprised him because it had been a long while since anyone had such an effect on him. It was something about the way AJ carried himself. Confident and proud and capable, something most of the guys Silas had dated had lacked. AJ was certainly different. He was a businessman, not an artist or a writer or an actor. He wasn't waiting tables until he got his big break. He had made his own big break. He had a career, a 401k, and a steadily planned-out future. Silas lingered at the counter, waiting for his drink as AJ found a secluded pair of seats in the corner of the coffee shop. "One iced brown sugar shaken espresso," the barista said. "Thanks." Silas took the drink, sipped it, and then strolled over to AJ sitting across from him. "How have you been?" "Since yesterday?" Silas lifted his eyebrows as he smirked. "Since yesterday?" Silas paused for a moment. A part of him, a very large part of him, wanted to answer honestly. He wanted to tell AJ that things had been rough. He was out of baby milk and out of food for himself. He hated taking gig shifts, he missed his job and his friends, and he really wasn't sure if he wanted to be a father. He wanted to unload and let it all out, but the words wouldn't pass his lips. AJ nodded. "We don't have to talk about it. We can move right on into business, if that would be better." "Much," Silas sighed. "It would be much better." "All right. So tell me more about the photos you picked for your portfolio." "Oh, right. Apologies. Normally, I have a hard copy of my portfolio, but since this was relatively short notice, I didn't get the chance to." "It's all right." AJ reached into his bag, pulled out a tablet and drew up the images. "If you wouldn't mind, I'd like for you to talk about them." "Sure." Silas nodded, positioning the tablet between them both and swiping through the photos. He landed on an outdoor shot of a young girl jumping into a puddle. The angle was worm's eye view, and the focus was on the water, but everything had come together for a dynamic shot. Even the girl's braids had fanned out like a spider's legs to fill the empty space of the frame. This one. Before autumn, I used to go out on my off days and do impromptu photo shoots. I saw her and asked her parents if I could take a few shots of her playing in the puddles, and this is what we came up with. I like shooting at low angles like this because I feel like it makes the subject look larger than life, and I think the shots turn out more engaging. He explained. It had been a long time since anyone had asked him to talk about his art, too. After his last partner, a professional graphic design artist, he wasn't even sure if what he was doing counted as art, but AJ was enraptured by them, looking at them as if they were gallery-hung exhibits. AJ nodded and flipped to the next one. It was a wedding shot spread of the bride and groom having their first kiss, cutting the cake, smashing the cake in each other's faces, and their rings. "Oh, this one's nothing special," Silas dismissed. "I just wanted to show you I've done professional work before. Me and a friend of mine worked this wedding. He did the videography, and I did the photography. I brought a couple lenses, and this is just one of my favorite compilations from the event." "I see. You are very good at capturing someone's personality." "Thanks." Silas's cheeks warmed. He continued through all of the photographs, sipping his coffee in between explanations. When they had completed the portfolio, AJ turned the tablet off and tucked it into his bag again. "I'm really impressed with your work, and I think you'd be a perfect fit for what I'm looking for. Company name started out as a tailor's, but we've since expanded to a lifestyle brand." "A tailor's?" "Yes, sir. Now what I've wanted to do is photo shoots for our fall, spring and wedding collections to give clients an idea of what kind of designs they could put together." "And this is where I come in? Fashion photography?" "Yes, but with as much leeway for creativity as you would need. I like your eye, and the way you develop composition, and I wouldn't want to stifle that." Silas nodded. "Okay. Does this sound good?" "Maybe." Silas flashed him a smile. "All right. What else do you need from me?" Silas sipped his drink. "We've got to talk timeline and compensation. Collections are usually shot the season before, so we would need to be shooting spring and winter and fall and summer." "Okay. This makes sense. And compensation?" Now Silas seized up. He wanted to quote AJ a fair price, but he also needed money. His need for money had passed desperation level a while ago. He also had never done something so official. I'm not quite sure yet." He flushed and ran his fingers along the rim of his coffee mug. "That's fine. I still have to draw up a contract anyway. How about you think on it and get back to me in a few days?" "Okay, yeah. I can do that." He bit the inside of his cheek as the conversation lapsed into silence. This was his chance to make a quick exit if he wanted to, but he didn't. "So, how'd you get into this business?" "How'd I end up owning a tailoring and men's fashion company?" "My father. He owned the tailoring business, and I inherited it from him, but these days people aren't as into tailoring as they are buying new clothes, so I had to pivot to stay up with the times." "True. I don't think I've ever had anything tailored. Unfortunate because a nicely tailored suit is everything. I've also never had to wear a suit." Silas quirked his lips into a sad smile. They were from completely different worlds. AJ probably had his first suit in high school for the debate team or something, and Silas had barely made it to graduation. He'd started working legally the day he turned 16. Before that, he had worked under the table as a busboy for several different restaurants. The idea of owning even one suit was foreign to him. "Never." Silas shook his head. "Never. Your turn. What's something you've never done?" AJ hummed, glancing away from Silas and pursing his lips together. He didn't answer right away, but it didn't bother Silas. Silas took a sip of his drink and relaxed in his seat. "I've never been joy-riding on back roads with my friends." Silas squinted. Is that what you think I do for fun? Because if so, you'd be correct. There's nothing more fun than riding late at night on quiet back roads listening to good music. We should do it. AJ chuckled. We should. Can we call it a date? I suppose it depends. On? If the contract you draw up has any regulations on dating contract employees. It won't, and you're not a contract employee. This is a business-to-business exchange. Okay then, Silas smiled. Your car or mine? Depends on what makes the experience more authentic. Silas smiled even more. Chapter 6. AJ. Silas's car, with the spotty AC and the well-worn fabric seats, made the experience more authentic for certain. His vehicle was so well used that the CD player didn't even work, and their choice of tunes was dependent on a good DJ. AJ wasn't complaining, though, because he wasn't in it for the music. He was in it for the time spent with Silas, and Silas was good company. Their conversation had been non-stop since they got in the vehicle. They talked more about their childhoods, their preferred hobbies, their future plans, and even their greatest fears, all through laughter and pop songs. Silas returned them back to the coffee shop after 3 hours of driving and talking, and turned off his car. So what do you think? AJ relaxed in his seat, resting a hand on the back of Silas's seat, thumb digging into the threadbare fabric. It's an experience for sure. A good experience? I think the company matters. Bad company, bad experience. Good company, good experience? I am inclined to agree with you, Silas smiled. And what do you think about me? Definitely, good company. Beautiful company, too. Silas's cheeks reddened and he looked away, staring out the driver's side window to avoid AJ's gaze. Thank you. No need to thank me. It's true. I had a nice time with you too, Silas admitted after a few lingering moments of silence. I'm glad. Well, I know this is really short notice, but I'm going to a show tonight, and I've got an extra ticket. Silas sucked in his bottom lip before releasing it. Why do you have an extra ticket? They were gifted to me by a family friend, and most tickets are gifted in pairs. Oh. He paused. What kind of show is it? It's a local Broadway production. You like theater? I like the arts, yes. You have to have creativity input before you can have creativity output, right? True, Silas mused. I hope you enjoy your show. AJ laughed. I'd enjoy it more if you came with me. Oh. Silas snapped his head around and wide eyes focused on AJ. The blush came back, and something about Silas's flushed red skin and bright green eyes had AJ's heart galloping. I don't know. I have the baby. I understand. Who is watching her now? My best friend Marigold. But I don't know. She may have to work or something. I see. Don't get me wrong, I would love to go. I haven't been to a Broadway show in such a long time, and you're right about creativity. Autumn can be a handful sometimes, and Marigold was watching her for free because of the interview, and I can't expect her not to go to work so I can go on a date. Do you mind if I ask? I don't think you'll be convincing. You're a stranger, Silas teased. I appreciate the offer, though. I really do, and I wish I could, but I should get home. She's going to call. A generic cell phone jingle cut off Silas's words, and he pulled his cell phone out of his pocket. Oh geez, he groaned. Speak of the devil. AJ smirked and crooked his finger, motioning to the cell phone as Silas answered it. Hey girl, Silas greeted the person on the other end. Yeah. Good. He paused. Oh yeah. Let me talk to her, AJ whispered. She's going to say no, Silas whispered back. What? Oh Lord, okay. Fine. With a reluctant eye roll, he offered his cell phone to AJ. For some reason, she wants to hear what you have to say. Chapter 7. Silas. He was in disbelief when Marigold actually wanted to talk to AJ, and in further disbelief when she agreed to watch Autumn through the night while he and AJ went to the Broadway show. With a satisfied smile on his face, AJ handed the cell phone back. "I still want to go home and change," Silas announced as he tucked his cell phone away again. "Perfect. Then I can pick you up from your place and make it a proper date." "I suppose so," Silas murmured. If the qualities of a proper date included being picked up from his place, then he'd never been on a proper date. All of his past partners had been modern. They'd met at the place in their own vehicles and split the price too, but something told Silas that AJ wasn't the splitting the bill type. "I should let you get going then, and how about I pick you up around 8? 8 is fine." "All right." Grinning, AJ let himself out of the passenger seat of Silas's car, closed it, and strolled over to his own vehicle. Silas bit his bottom lip as he watched AJ retreat, studying his form from behind. Once AJ had gotten in his car and started it up, Silas left. Marigold and Autumn were waiting for him at the front of his apartment complex, relaxing in the park by the building. When Silas rolled up, Marigold scooped Autumn into her arms and sprinted over to the vehicle. "Tell me everything," she demanded. Autumn stretched her hands out for Silas, and he took her into his arms. Okay, Silas laughed. "First, thank you for watching her. I appreciate it so much." "Sure, whatever. Tell me the juicy stuff." "I'm getting there." He led Marigold back up to his apartment as he rehashed all the details of the meeting. He had arrived back at his place around 5 o'clock and had plenty of time to get ready, but as the clock ticked away, his nerves grew. What if he wasn't AJ's type? What if he wasn't cultured enough to enjoy the same things as AJ? What if he did something stupid at the event? Once he'd put on the nicest clothes he had, he spun around in front of the mirror, checking himself at all angles. Marigold stood in the bathroom doorway, folding her arms. "You look good." "Do I?" Silas lifted an eyebrow, running leave-in conditioner through his curly hair, making a futile attempt at taming it. "You do. He's going to want to eat you with a spoon." Don't say that." Marigold rolled her eyes. "It's true, and I want you to have fun tonight, okay? Don't worry about me. Don't worry about Autumn. AJ is a nice man, and you deserve this. You deserve someone nice." She fixed his collar before giving him a hug and leaving him alone, letting him finish the last bit of getting dressed on his own. In no time, AJ was messaging him, and he was kissing Autumn and Marigold goodbye while trying to unravel the bundle of knots in his stomach. His hands trembled as he left his apartment and stepped out of the building, meeting AJ just past the building's entrance. AJ looked good. He changed from his casual daytime attire to evening attire that consisted of well-tailored slacks, a well-fitted top, and a sharp blazer. His locks were half up and half down, with a bun sitting on the back of his head and the rest falling along his shoulders. When AJ's gaze landed on Silas, he smiled through a tightened jaw. "You're gorgeous," AJ breathed, looking Silas up and down. "I bet you tell all the boys that," Silas replied, voice cracking over his own joke. "I assure you, I don't." AJ led Silas to his car, opened the passenger door, and ushered him inside. Silas focused on Marigold's words. He deserved this. He deserved someone nice. He barely believed them, but he repeated them like a yogi mantra as they drove to the show and settled in their premium seats. The first half of the show was the most magnificent thing he'd ever seen, and his gaze was glued to the stage the entire time. The nicest show he'd ever been to, up until this point of course, had been a traveling Broadway run of The Lion King. It wasn't bad at all, but it was also nothing like this. The seats were excellent, and the artistry brought tears to his eyes. During the intermission, AJ led him into the lobby, guiding him with a hand at his back. "How are you enjoying the show?" "It's amazing. Thank you for inviting me," Silas said. "The performances are beautiful, like a visual painting or a song. Do you come to shows like this often?" "Every chance I get." AJ smiled. I'm no artist, but… You're not. Aren't you the creative designer for the work you want me to photograph? Perhaps. People come to me with ideas, and I perfect them. I don't know anything about sewing or color. I just know what looks good. Silas smiled. Knowing what looks good is an art, he whispered. Knowing what is going to come in and out of fashion? Staying ahead. It's a talent like any other. He shyly reached for AJ's hand, tickling AJ's palm with his fingers. You believe so? Silas nodded. I do, and I'm excited to photograph your work so the world can see your vision as you intended it. AJ smirked, squeezing Silas's hand. It won't be my vision. It'll be our vision together. For a second time, tears brimmed Silas's eyes. He didn't say much else to AJ during the intermission because each time he opened his mouth, people approached them. All of them were friends and acquaintances of AJ's, and AJ introduced Silas as a friend and professional photographer each time. Silas's shook so many hands that his own felt gummy at the end, but each time AJ introduced him, the other person's face lit up, and they asked question after question of Silas. They made it back to their seats as the room dimmed for the second half of the show. Silas had enjoyed the first half of the show, but the second half was infinitely sweeter because his hand was trapped in AJ's the whole time. AJ alternatively squeezed his hand and stroked the meat of his thumb, giving a sweet reminder of his presence and the bond forming between them. When the show ended, AJ hustled them out of there, regarding Silas once they reached his vehicle. I do not mean to cut your night short. I can take you home or we can go someplace else. Silas chewed his bottom lip, thinking it over. Part of him wanted to ride into the sunset with AJ, but the other part of him knew that would never be an option. I had a great time, Silas started, but I should probably get home to the baby. Of course. Silas searched AJ's face for disappointment, but his pleasant expression hadn't changed. I really had a great time, Silas reiterated as they got into AJ's vehicle and left the event hall. During the drive, they both went into their favorite parts of the show. Silas liked the visual expression, the emotions shown by the performers. Predictably, AJ loved the costumes and clothing design. When they reached Silas's apartment again, AJ led him up to the entrance with their fingers laced together. And when it was time to part ways, neither of them moved. Silas started. Might I kiss you? I've never had someone ask before. AJ tugged Silas closer until their bodies were almost touching. There was space in between them, but it was sparse, and Silas's body felt electric, like the moment just before lightning and the ground connected. It's a twofold project. Lightning made the offer, and the ground accepted. Silas had left AJ hanging, even though the answer had never been in question. He wanted a lot more than a kiss from AJ. He wanted to be devoured by him. He wanted to memorize every tight muscle of AJ's body, every dimple and mole. Yes, Silas breathed before hooking an arm around AJ's shoulders and pressing their lips together. Chapter 8. AJ. Silas tasted like heaven, like fresh spring honey from the second round of blooming flowers, and AJ didn't want to let him go. He wanted to devour Silas. He placed his hands on Silas's hips and pulled him closer until their bodies were meshed together. When the kiss broke, Silas sighed, sliding his hands along AJ's shoulders. You're quite good at this, Silas whispered, smirked, and leaned in for another. You are too, AJ said on the next break. Once more, and then you should go inside and relieve Marigold of her duties. Smiling, Silas did as told, taking another kiss. He arched and groaned into it, bruising AJ's lips on his retreat. I want to see you again. Perhaps next weekend, but you asked me, so you have to plan what we do. Okay. Next weekend. I want you to pick me up Friday night, at 8 o'clock sharp. All right, AJ chuckled. I'll see you then. He lingered outside the apartment complex as Silas wandered inside, lips still tingling from the kiss. He hadn't felt this way about another person in years, if ever, but all he wanted was to be next to Silas, looking into his eyes and breathing his air. Silas was prickly around the edges, but he had good reason. His life hadn't been easy. Even now. He should be out on the town with his friends, drinking and partying, but he was inside raising his sister's child. Alone. AJ collapsed in his bed when he got home and dug around for his cell phone. He had Silas's contact information, but they'd only chatted through email. His fingers hovered over his cell phone's keyboard, debating on whether he should text or email. Text message was more intimate, but were they at that point? Would it be inappropriate for him to text if their relationship was working? However, there was nothing formal about that kiss. AJ squeezed his eyes shut before exhaling a groan and sending Silas an email. Email was the safest. The next week dragged by. AJ barely had any free time, but with every spare moment, his brain floated to thoughts of Silas. Silas's eyes, lips, and sweet, impish smile were etched in his memory. His circling thoughts were made worse each time he sent Silas an email. Beyond their impending date, they had a running conversation about plans for the upcoming product photo shoot. AJ sent over outfits, and Silas responded with creative ideas. Some of his emails even included sketched mock-ups. By the time Friday rolled around, they had moved personal conversation to text while keeping business conversation in the email. Through text, they'd been talking all day, discussing everything from best local restaurants to worst classic horror movies. At lunch, AJ called him. "Hello," Silas answered, breathless. "Am I disturbing you?" AJ asked. No. I was on the other side of the apartment. I just didn't expect a call. What's up? I wanted to hear your voice, AJ said. And also tell you that the Saw franchise is an absolutely dreadful series. I saw the first one for free, and I wish I could have gotten a refund. Silas laughed. Okay, big boy. Well, I think the idea was brilliant, but the execution wasn't as successful as it could have been. You cannot say that it wasn't a brilliant premise. Putting people in a box and making them struggle out of it? AJ shot back. Sir, is that all you got from the movie? It was about taking justice into a vigilante's hands and giving people a choice in what to do with their lives, forcing them to appreciate what they had. AJ mused. There are still plot holes. The first one takes place in one room. We call that budget-friendly. When's the last time you watched it? It's been a while. I think we should watch it together then. That should be our date, in fact. Watching a crappy movie? Silas chuckled. Watching a crappy movie with me? Is that not special enough for you? It's plenty special. Good, then I'll see you in a few hours. Hold on. How are we going to watch the movie? You're asking for too much information. I'll see you in a few hours. Silas had a tease in his voice, and he didn't even wait for a goodbye before he ended the call. Mr. Freeman. His secretary, Kelsey, knocked on his door and then let herself in. Your last meeting of the day, she started, but then she looked up and stared at him. My last meeting? AJ lifted his eyebrows. Your last meeting is I'm sorry, I've just never seen you smiling. Don't be silly. I'm not being silly. I've never seen you smile like this, like, forgive me, like you're in love. She bit her bottom lip, flinching after she said it. Perhaps. What do you have to tell me about my last meeting? He's cancelled. Good. Sir, this is the supplier for all the silk satin you need for the lining of your summer blazer. It's fine. It will be dealt with on Monday. If there's nothing else scheduled for the day, you are free to go. Her eyes grew wide. I'm sorry? Sorry for what? We're done for the day. I will see you Monday morning. AJ shut down his computer and stood up, stretching his arms over his head. Unless you'd like to stay. If that is the case, I won't stop you, but I will also not be here. He breezed past her, leaving her in the doorway staring after him. Okay, she trailed, following AJ until she reached her desk. When you leave, let security know. AJ said. Thank you for a good week. Kelsey stared after him. Thanks. He even offered her a wave before he left the office and escaped to his car. Now he could think about Silas all he wanted, and he did. He thought about him as he drove home, mulling over all the potential directions for the night. He thought about what kind of future he could have with Silas, too. He was getting ahead of himself as they'd only had one date, but his mind could build a future with Silas, and it excited him. He started preparing for their date early, trying on several casual outfits for his mirror. As he settled on a pair of sweatpants and a V-necked shirt, his cell phone buzzed. It was a text message first and then a call. Hello, he answered. Hi. It was Silas, and AJ's heart skipped a few beats. I have bad news. I can't get anyone to watch Autumn tonight. Marigold is working, and I had asked another friend, but they flaked out on me, so I don't know if a date tonight is going to work. She can be with us. Oh, I don't know. She's been cutting teeth, so she's been really fussy, and it takes her a long time to settle down. It's all right. I'll have to meet her eventually, won't I? Eventually, like when we're serious about being together. I'm serious now. Aren't you? AJ replied. I don't date for fun, Silas. I don't waste my time. I think you're beautiful and intelligent, and I know what I want. Silas sighed. I don't know. You deserve someone with a job who's not taking care of his sister's child. You deserve someone who has some kind of future. You do have a future. You're a father and a photographer. Silas scoffed. People don't make money with art. I will see you in Autumn shortly, AJ said, ignoring Silas's dismissive response. And I am looking forward to it. He ended the call before Silas could create more protests and finished getting ready. On the way to Silas's, he stopped at the grocery, picking up a couple treats for all three of them. In no time, he arrived at Silas' apartment, strolling up to the man's door and knocking. Silas opened the door in a pair of briefs, with Autumn in the crook of his elbow, resting her head on his shoulder. His hair was in wild curls all around his face, and exhaustion was heavy in his eyes. I didn't think you were coming. Silas trailed, stepping out of the center of the doorframe. You thought I would change my mind? Yes. Most men aren't too interested in playing house on the second date. AJ stepped inside the little apartment. It was a far cry from even his parents' modest place, and it was abundantly clear how exhausted Silas had been. The floor was barely visible under the explosion of bright-colored clothes and high-contrast toys. I'm not most men. Silas closed the door behind him, plastering himself against it as AJ walked through the living room and into the shallow kitchen. Every counter was covered. One had old pots and pans, another had clean pots and pans, and a third had been littered with bottles, spilled formula, and baby food. I was going to clean before you got here. Silas followed him, biting his bottom lip. This is so embarrassing. If you want to leave, you can. I'm not leaving. AJ set the bags on the last spot of clean counter space and surveyed the damage. I brought some snacks for us all, because a movie night is hardly complete without them. Okay. Silas crossed his arms. AJ uncovered the snacks, stacking them in a neat row on the counter. Then he moved on to the rest of the kitchen. He cleared out the sink, stacking the pots, pans, and plates on the counter as he ran a sink full of steamy, hot, soapy water. He set the dishes in to soak, and moved on to the bottles, scrubbing and rinsing them out and setting them aside. You really don't have to do that, Silas groaned. I should be doing all this. You should be relaxing. I am fine. You can keep me company, though. Tell me again why you like the Saw franchise so much. AJ dried his hands. Let me lay out a mat for Autumn to lie on. Silas smirked and shook his head. Before AJ could leave the kitchen, he had spread out a soft fabric towel, set Autumn on it, and passed her a couple blocky toys. First, I want you to know I had no intentions of getting you over here so you would clean my house. And second, not including the Purge franchise, the Saw franchise says the most about our society and culture, what we value and what our ideals are. I know, and elaborate. Smiling, AJ turned back to the sink and dunked his hands in the soapy water. Chapter 9. Silas. He liked seeing a man in his kitchen, especially one as sexy as AJ, one he was already developing feelings for, one who listened to what he was saying, responded accordingly, and had something to say back. AJ was ticking all the boxes, and doing so in a pair of sweatpants and a V-neck t-shirt. He was engaging a lot more than Silas's brain with his presence, and Silas kind of liked the tease. Silas also liked that Autumn liked AJ. She was happy and content sitting in the middle of the floor while AJ moved around her, and Silas hung in the kitchen's doorway, yammering on and on about the finer details of the Saw franchise. It had been a while since he'd seen it, and he wasn't denying all its numerous flaws, but something about the series really clicked with him. It had a place in his favorites list, even if the first one was low budget and full of plot holes. When AJ finished cleaning the kitchen, he prepared the snacks. Silas moved from the door frame to the counter, sitting on it and leaning back against the cabinets as he moved from the Saw franchise to another one of his favorite franchises, Batman. AJ listened intently while offering up small bits of popcorn and candies. Okay, but seriously. If you had to pick one of Batman's villains besides the Joker, which would be your favorite? What are the options, again? AJ dried his hands and approached Silas, hooking his thumbs into the pockets of his sweats. Silas sucked in a breath. Besides the Joker, who's well-known but particularly annoying, there's Punchline Deadshot, Josh, he trailed. Black Mask, AJ said as the distance between them shrank to nothing. They were almost touching chest to chest. He's a good one, Silas whispered. It makes sense for you. Is that the kind of villain you'd become if the world was different? AJ's face screwed up. He smiled and grimaced at the same time. Yes. I'm sorry, Silas whispered. You don't have to wear a mask around me. He hesitated before reaching for AJ, resting his hands on AJ's shoulders. He studied his face, staring at his full, still smiling lips. I know. AJ closed that last bit of distance between them and pressed their lips together. Silas's body was on fire. Every nerve ending was sparking after AJ's kiss, and he didn't know what to do with himself. After months of being completely focused on Autumn, uninterested in anything else, AJ had changed that. AJ had shifted his vision. He wanted more than just a best friend and a baby. He wanted to start a life with someone who loved Autumn as much as they loved him, and AJ had shown him possibilities. AJ had shown him there was a man out there who wouldn't turn him away, and that man was standing right in front of him already. What would you think of me if I told you I wanted more? How much more? AJ rumbled, hooded eyes studying Silas's face. Everything. What about the baby? AJ tore his attention away from Silas, and Silas followed his gaze. Autumn had fallen asleep on the mat, spread out like a drunken frat boy. Silas chuckled and rested his head on AJ's chest. I think she'll be okay for a few minutes. A few minutes? Silas's eyes widened, and he chuckled again. What? Did I say something wrong? AJ didn't reply with words. Instead, he lifted Silas's chin and pressed their lips together again. He walked them back into the living room and eased Silas onto the couch. Silas sighed, shivering under AJ's body. I'm nervous, he murmured. Don't be. AJ kissed him again, lifting his shirt up to get at his belly, where he dotted kisses all the way down the center, stubbled chin tickling and scratching Silas. Silas exhaled in a groan as AJ continued, now brushing his fingers along the rim of his pants. That excited him too, and the crotch of his pants grew tight with his excitement. Please, he groaned. I've barely started. I know, but Silas arched, legs spreading apart. He rested a hand on AJ's shoulder. It's been a while. Well, we've only got a few minutes, so we need to make it count, don't we? AJ teased, stripping off the rest of their clothes. It wasn't supposed to be so quick, but by no fault from either of them, they were both blowing their top in record time. Sweaty body against sweaty body, lips against lips, they peaked together with time to spare. With a groan, AJ slumped back on the couch. Silas chuckled. You sound winded. I am winded. Silas chuckled again. So I suppose you don't have time for another round? AJ groaned again. If you ride me, then yes. Grinning, Silas crawled on top of AJ, one leg on either side of his torso, and slid his hands along AJ's arms until their fingers slid together. He kissed him as his body arched and rolled at a much slower tempo than before. You're beautiful, AJ whispered against Silas's lips. Thank you, Silas murmured back. He lowered himself more on AJ, and they fell into a new rhythm. It was gentle and sweet, but Silas was still edging closer towards his orgasm with each thrust. The second round lasted twice as long as the first, but that wasn't saying much, and this time they collapsed into each other. AJ wrapped his arms around Silas, and Silas buried his face into AJ's sweaty chest. Hours later, Silas cracked his eyes open. He was still on the couch, but the soft cushioned fabric had replaced AJ's body, and a blanket had been tucked around him. The apartment was silent, and Silas threw back the sheets, bolting upright at a dizzying speed. Oh my God, Silas whispered, digging around the floor for his underwear, until he caught a glimpse of Autumn on the floor in the kitchen. Oh my God, he said again. Autumn smiled, clapping her hands and giggling. Oh you! Silas couldn't help but smile as well, as he crawled over to her and scooped her into his arms. She's already been fed and changed, AJ said. And I hope you slept well. I didn't even hear her crying. Because she didn't, AJ explained. What kind of breakfast would you like? There's not much here, but I have some groceries being delivered shortly. You don't? Silas started, but a knot in his throat cut off all his words. The embarrassment and shame of not being able to care for himself, let alone Autumn, crept up inside him all over again. I know I don't, but I wanted to. Smiling, AJ crossed the room and cupped Silas's hands in his. I enjoyed last night. I enjoy your company and Autumn's, and I want to cook you breakfast. So let me. Chapter 10. AJ. AJ had been dating Silas for officially a month by the time they were ready for the photo shoot. He had all the initial mock-ups for his summer line completed and approved. He had also selected all of the models he wanted to use for the line as well. Fittings had been done, and all that was left was the early Sunday morning photo shoot. His parents hated that he had scheduled a photo shoot on a Sunday morning, but it was the only day Silas had reliable babysitting for Autumn. As much as AJ didn't mind the baby being present, they had both agreed having the baby there would be too much of a distraction for them both. AJ adored Autumn almost as much as he adored Silas. Their dates had been the three of them, and he had loved every second of it. It was a situation where AJ hadn't known what he'd needed until he had it. He needed to step into a family, something already established, not something he needed to build from the ground up. He could fix a cracked foundation or help patch up a leaking roof, but he had no vision for building the whole house from the ground up. Working out his contract with Silas had been the hardest part. Silas had eventually confessed, when AJ had inquired about the lack of photography equipment, that he'd sold his equipment to pay for Autumn's needs. Because of this, part of their initial contract included all the necessary equipment, including multiple lenses. They had made a date out of it, with AJ caring for Autumn while Silas browsed the photography store with an unlimited budget. He was still reasonable with his purchases, seeking the best deal no matter what. AJ loved seeing the smile on his face. He'd also given Silas an advance, paying him enough for Silas and Autumn to live in the weeks leading up to the shoot. After all, the planning was part of the work, perhaps even the bulk of the work. The night before the shoot, AJ couldn't sleep. He had all the faith in Silas to do a brilliant, beyond brilliant job, but he was still nervous. This was his business, his livelihood, and putting even part of that in someone else's hands was a risk that set him on edge. He was distraught the morning of, too, wandering around aimlessly, and he wasn't sure how he made it to the shoot location, but he was relieved to see Silas already there when he arrived. Even though he was the only photographer, it hadn't stopped him from enlisting the help of AJ's employees. With a gentle command and confidence, he directed them into position with extra floodlights and reflective bounce boards. Then he took his test shots, reviewed them on a laptop they had also purchased for equipment, and directed the models before taking another round of shots. As AJ approached, Silas smiled, cradling the camera in his arms as a little blush dusted his cheeks. "Hi," Silas greeted him. "Good morning," AJ said, injecting as much confidence in his voice as he could, though he was sure Silas saw through it. "Already started?" Silas nodded. "Everyone was here rather early, and I didn't want to waste anyone's time, especially the models. I hope you don't mind?" Not at all. In fact, he appreciated it. It was less work he had to do, and less time he had to spend as a bundle of nerves. "If you want to, I figured you'd take a look at the shots from the laptop and be able to give me any suggestions if you don't like something or want to see a different pose or angle. That way there's some immediate feedback and we can run through this," Silas explained. "I like to, you know what, you'll see. You'll get it once we get going." Smiling, he turned back to the model, gave a nod, and they went right back into shooting. AJ took his spot behind the laptop with his secretary, Kelsey. "He's good," she remarked. "How'd you find him, again?" "He used to be the guy who brought me lunch every day." "Huh." She chuckled. "I guess talent can be found everywhere." The morning flew by. Silas took loads of shots, switching out batteries and memory cards as needed, and AJ barely had any complaints. The man knew his business, and AJ enjoyed watching. Silas called time for a break and skipped over to AJ. "You didn't say much with the pictures. Are they all okay?" "They're great." AJ smiled, stepping a little closer to Silas. He reached for Silas's free hand, tickling his palm gently. AJ. "Honey." A very familiar voice called, and AJ closed his eyes. It was his mother, and he could hear her and his father's shuffling footsteps coming straight for him. Still with Silas's hand over his, he turned to greet his parents. "Hey Mom, Dad," he said in a tone slightly higher than his natural voice. The thing was, his parents loved him, he was sure of it, and he wasn't out to them either. They were still expecting a replica of their relationship. Literally. "We brought you some lunch, as we knew it would be a long day of working for you. How are the pictures looking so far? Who's the photographer, again?" "You didn't have to bring me anything," AJ admitted. "And the photographer is Silas." Reluctantly, AJ pulled his hand away and motioned to the man standing next to him. "Silas." "A good name," his father gave a stern nod and a firm handshake. "Thanks," Silas replied. Then he looked at AJ, who had now begun to blush. "Oh, I hope one day you get a partner, so you can share all of this with her. You have to pick someone creative, so they can aid in your visions," his mother gushed as she looked around the setup. "She's got to share your passion for design. I believe I know someone at church you might like." "Mom," AJ cut her off. "I already have found someone like that." "Where is she?" His mother's gaze darted around. AJ corrected, heart pounding in his chest as he did. "And he's right here." He put a hand on Silas's back as he stepped closer to him. "This is Silas. We've been talking for a little while now, and I won't lie. I think he may be the one." "How can you know already?" Both his mother and Silas said at the same time, both with wide eyes. "Sometimes when you know, AJ's father chimed in. "My dear," he said, looking at his wife. "I knew I was going to marry you from the day I saw you. I can't say I'm not surprised my son is the same way." Silas looked at AJ, and then looked at the man's parents. I have a child, he blurted out. Autumn, AJ added. And she's lovely. AJ's father nodded, seeming unbothered by the admission. His mother hadn't come around so quickly, but at her husband's words, she had at least made a commitment to patience. Well, she sighed. I would love for you and your daughter to join us for dinner sometime very soon. How about this evening after the shoot? We had planned to take AJ for dinner, but I'd certainly not mind the additional company. I'm not sure Dinner is on us. I insist, AJ's father said, casting a warm smile in Silas's direction. Well, okay then. Silas glanced at AJ. Well, I should get back to the shoot. He hiked his thumb behind him, squeezed AJ's arm, and then shuffled away. He seems nice, AJ's mother ventured. He is. And I meant what I said. He's the one I want to be with. Forever. AJ confirmed. Epilogue. 1 year later. Silas. He had never been one for special dates or the significance of dates, but this date he couldn't forget. This was the date he first met AJ. The day he walked into the man's building, delivered his meal, and left half of it in the car. The day his entire life changed, both professionally and personally. It had been such a regular day, but it had also been the day his whole world changed. Everything had happened so fast after that. Weeks later, he was doing the photo shoot. Months later, they were moving in together, acting like a little family. With the continued contract through AJ's business and the word-of-mouth advertising, Silas had been able to dump all the freelancing gig work that paid him pennies on the hour. He'd been able to invest in daycare for Autumn and expand his working hours. He'd been able to stock his cabinets so full of food and pay the rent months in advance. With their combined incomes, Silas was living better than he ever imagined he could. It wasn't just about the money, though. It was about everything. It was the fact that AJ picked Autumn up from daycare 3 times a week, and on the days Silas had clients. It was the fact that he didn't have to worry where AJ was, or what he was doing. He checked in every time and all the time. It was the fact that they even had weekends together. Aside from when Silas worked a wedding, which they usually found a babysitter for Autumn so AJ could manage the equipment and set up, they enjoyed family Saturdays and lazy Sundays. This was one of those Saturdays. AJ had woken early to tend to Autumn after Silas had a late night shooting action shots for a local nightclub. The pictures had come out superb and moody, with glowing blues and purples, but he hadn't turned in until nearly 3 o'clock in the morning. He woke again a little before noon, and lay in bed listening to Autumn's squealing laughter. When he finally emerged, AJ already had the day's plan set. They were going on a picnic which was already packed, and they were just waiting for Silas to be ready. And Silas was ready in less than 10 minutes. Then they all piled into AJ's car and drove to the local park. They spread out their blanket and then unpacked Autumn's toys and the food. She played nearby them, instantly crawling off the blanket but not straying too far from their line of vision. Silas nibbled at the finger foods AJ had packed, fresh sliced fruits and quarter-cut sandwiches. How did last night go? AJ asked. It went great, actually. I mean, I love shooting weddings and the fashion shots, but the energy of a club is so fun. I'm glad you enjoyed it, AJ smiled. Me too. They should be great portfolio shots. I was thinking about maybe taking some classes in graphic design, now that Autumn is in daycare and I have the time to attend a class. I think it would help further what I can offer to clients. I think it's a great idea. AJ smiled. I will support you in all the ways I can. Silas smiled. Thank you. Hey, his smile faltered just for a split second before it was back in full force again. Do you know what today is? Today? AJ inclined his head. Silas nodded. Yeah, of course. It's the anniversary of the day I first laid eyes on you. Silas smiled. You were intimidating. I thought you were going to be different, but I am so glad you are how you are. I'm glad you are how you are too. Then he reached into his pocket and pulled out a little box. "I told you when I introduced you to my parents, you were the one for me, and I meant it. Silas, will you marry me?" He opened the box and showed him an understated but smartly designed engagement band. "Yes," Silas said almost before he got the question out. "Yes. I'll marry you."